Hello and welcome to another edition of City at Your Service. I'm Jonathan Thomas, and today I am joined by the Director of Austin Parks and Recreation, Jesús Aguirre. Thank you so much for joining us, Jesús. We really appreciate it. You've been a busy man, busy man here lately. Well, we're here to talk about National Park and Recreation Month, which is the month of July. Um, just why, in your mind, you think it's important for Austin to participate in National Park and
Sure.
Recreation Month?
Sure. Well, thank you. And John, the National Parks and Recreation Month is an annual celebration that is really designed to highlight how important parks and recreation activities and spaces are to residents, but most importantly, the professionals that make those things happen, those spaces available. Parks help us come together, and they're really just the reason why our communities can be so vibrant and sustainable.
Now, the theme for this month here is the power of. What does that mean to you?
Sure. It's a great, in my view, a great way to elicit from our constituents, our residents, what parks and recreation means to them. Right? We believe parks and recreation truly are transformative for individuals and for their communities, and we just ask Austinites to really reflect on what parks and recreation means to them and the power that they view in them. So, for example, if it's the power of nature, going out for a quiet walk along the lake, the power of play for young people to engage with each other, the power of community where we all come together and build culture, build community with our residents. So it's really about what parks and recreation mean to the people who use them.
No, that's great. And so as growing up, some of my most fond memories were at parks. Parks are just such a great place. And I mean, I made the majority of my friends growing up from playing basketball in the park. You explain just how parks, create that special bond between people and connect people.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is. It is about that power of connection. Parks are where we celebrate life's milestones. It's where we come to, again, to celebrate. It's also where we come to protest. It's where we come to mourn. It's where we come to engage with other members of our community, exchange cultural experiences. For me growing up, it's also where I went and got in trouble, right? In a way to, big family. My mom would just kick us out of the house. That's where we went to parks to celebrate and to get to know each other. And here in Austin, we are super, super fortunate to have an amazing parks and recreation system. We have over 20,000 acres of parkland across the city, almost 400 parks. And when you think about all those things, 300 miles of trails, we've got 45 facilities, recreation, senior facilities. We've got 34 aquatic facilities, and the list goes on and on and on. And so, the power of connection and bringing community together, there's just so many opportunities for folks to do that, to do that across the city. So we're excited to continue to do that.
Now, someone as accomplished as yourself, you couldn't have gotten in that much trouble.
Well,
Right.
don't ask my mom. Yeah.
That's funny. Now, youth programs also a big part of parks, right? And leagues, everybody meets up in the park to play. How is Austin Parks and Recreation expanding those opportunities, for play at these parks?
Yeah, no, we are absolutely focused on providing just engagement opportunities for all ages, but youth is certainly important for us. It won't surprise you that right now, as the summer hits, is really when Parks and Recreation steps up and is able to do even more for our family. So we do everything from obviously all of our summer camps, after school programs, nature and science programs. Anything that you can imagine that folks want to do during the summer with their kids, we do that. And it's really about, for us at the department, is trying to make this as affordable as possible to many of our families. And so we've worked really hard to provide not just increase the types of programming, increase the quality of the programming, but also increase the accessibility. And we do that by, scholarships and financial assistance so that, if a family really needs the support, we can figure out a way to have them be able to participate. And in many cases, especially during the summer when families have to work and school's out, we really focus on making sure that the families that qualify for that financial assistance can really pay for almost all of their summer camp experience through some of the assistance that we're able to provide. So we believe that's so important because you think about all the things that happen in our lives as youth and all the distractions, whether it's screens or the things that are happening. Our job and our goal is really just to focus kids on being engaged and active in really positive ways.
Yeah, exactly. And just embracing the outdoors. That's such
Absolutely.
an important
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, and you think about, I think about young kids as well. And we talked about what happens in parks, but you also think about when you're a toddler, you see them on the playground. Like that's when they learn how to engage with people. That's when they develop their sort of negotiation skills. That's when they develop executive skills, which are really going to set them up for success. So we're really excited to be a part of that overall, child development aspect for the folks who participate in our programs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I got a chance to see the opening of the Waterloo Greenway. Such a beautiful space, and you were there at the
Yeah.
at the opening, and you had some great things to say about that. Um, and that's such a good example of just taking advantage of just the natural space that we have and sprucing it up and
Yep.
expanding it and everything. Because you just kind of explain more about how the Parks and Recreation Department is working to expand or restore
Sure.
the natural parts
Yeah.
here of the city.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a couple of ways that we really approach this. So fundamentally, our role at the department is to make these spaces as accessible to everyone, right? And part of that is, when you look at the city, again, we're really fortunate to have a pretty robust parks and recreation system, but there's some of the areas of the city that don't have as much, right? The areas that have been historically sort of under-resourced or marginalized, we really focus on investing in those areas. Now, when it comes to sort of, overall nature, like all of us know that nature is healing. All of us know that being able to go for a walk in the park or being able to enjoy sort of, clean air, clean water, all those things that people think about, parks are a big part of that, right? Restoring parks and restoring habitat. You mentioned the Waterloo Greenway. That project is all about restoring this riparian ecosystem along Waller Creek. Waller Creek used to flood, and people weren't able to even live along the banks. And now we can walk down this trail and really be immersed in nature in the middle of downtown Austin. So it's just a good example of sort of the restorative power of parks as well. But we're really focused on that access, and we're focused on also education. We want not just in our own programs. Obviously, we have a lot of nature and play programs, but we also try to model with our own operations. Right, we're trying to electrify our fleet, for example, and all of our equipment. It's going to take us a while, but we're trying to do that. Right, we're trying to practice best practices in terms of the plantings and the native species that we plant, all the things that contribute to sustaining the environment. We model that and try to educate the community along the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Now, are there any specific like nature-based initiatives that you're excited about coming up this year?
Absolutely, and it's Austin Parks and Recreation is really a leader in sort of the nature play space, and I can say that because I haven't been here this long, and I won't take any credit for it, but they really have been amazing. There's a national organization that I'm involved with that's called Children and Nature Network, and that organization is really based in the idea that we need to get kids away from screens and out in nature. And there's all sorts of research that talks about how important and how powerful nature is for all of us, but especially for young kids and especially for kids of color. So the thing that we're really focused on here, Nature Plays, is really trying to create opportunities for kiddos to be outdoors, and to play in nature. And we've created sort of this national organization has really informed this, and in Seattle, excuse me, in Austin, we've really taken the lead here in creating natural play spaces that encourage kids to experiment, to play, to dig, to deal with natural trees and branches, etc. And we still have the typical playgrounds with some of the plastic things, but the nature play is really where it's at, and it really builds this amazing connection to nature. Because really, you know, whatever you want to say about how our climate is changing and what's happening to our planet, the only way really to quote unquote save our planet is by getting young people connected to nature and feel that inherent responsibility for it. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And you piggyback off something you touched on briefly there, and we've actually discussed it a little bit too, off air as well. Is the fact that you're trying to really restore that equity
Mhm.
in terms of the spaces and the way they look for everyone in every part of the city. I mean, just how has that mission
Mm.
gone in your time here, and how have you guys been able to embody the power of belonging for everybody
Yeah.
in the
A-
spaces?
And that's such an important aspect of our work, and you might know that our department is going to be 100 years old in 2028, and that's a big celebration for us, but it's also a really important recognition of a lot of what led to the creation of our department is not necessarily positive, right? Austin talks a lot about their 1928 plan.
1928. I knew you were right. I knew that's where you were going.
Which in so many ways are things that we as government, I can obviously I'm a city employee, but we as government put policies and practices and laws in place to make it harder for certain communities to have access to things like basic infrastructure, including parks and recreation. And so what we do at the department is really make sure that we focus on undoing some of those challenges. So much of our work is focused on equity, and much of our work is focused on the east side of town, where that's where back in the day in the 1928 plan, all the folks who were of limited resources, all the black and brown folks got pushed out to that side of the city with very little investment. So we really strive to bring that accessibility to that side of town as well. Part of it is acquiring new parkland to make sure that we provide that access. Part of it is restoring the parkland that's there, including the really important ecosystems that are out there. So it really is a comprehensive approach. That doesn't mean that we don't believe everyone deserves access to parks and recreation, because we absolutely do, but we want to undo some of the challenges that we created ourselves in the past.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And a part of that, for everyone, the reason why it's so important for everyone to be able to have a place, a good park to go to, a good natural space to go to, is that it also does really help your mental health and put you in a better frame of mind when you can go out and just see how beautiful your community is, and how beautiful the city is just down the street from your house or wherever, right?
Yeah.
So just, how much do you all keep that in mind and promote that when you're, whether you're promoting, something at a park, or dedicating a new park, just how much is that in your mind, and, part of your mission statement?
Yeah, no, it's at the core of our mission in that, again, parks mean a lot to lots of people, and people enjoy parks in different ways. But at a really fundamental level, we believe that parks are really about mental well-being in many cases. So whether I just go for a walk on the trail or in my neighborhood park, or I engage in a community building activity with my neighbors, or if I'm having a really tough day, I go out into a park and it sort of elevates you. And there's all sorts of science behind this, right, in terms of the chemicals that triggers in your body. So we take that to heart, and it's really important, and it's really what anchors our access. So from a sort of kind of bureaucratic, boring way, we strive to make sure that everybody in the city of Austin has access to a park within a 10-minute walk, right? So no matter where I live, if I walk 10 minutes, I can get to a park and green space. Now, if you live in the downtown core, we shrink that to 5 minutes because it's more obviously dense, and there's more people there. But that's such an important way to approach this, so that we make sure that, again, whether I have a backyard or not, it doesn't matter. Within 10 minutes, I can get to a park. Now, in addition to that, we also look at the overall system, and I mentioned the 20,000 acres. We want to continue to acquire parkland, because that, in addition to the access piece, it also has huge benefits in terms of air quality and water quality and shade and temperature and all of the things that we as residents of the city have to contend with. And so all that comes together to really help the city continue to be thriving and sustainable. And I think Parks and Recreation are a big part of that. And I want to come back to the really important point of this is the people who do that, right? Here in Austin, we are so fortunate to have over 850 full-time employees that come to work every single day to work on behalf of the residents of the city here at Austin Parks and Recreation. Not to mention, in the summer, we hire another 1,000 to 1,500 people to come and staff our pools and our summer camps and do the extra maintenance in our facilities. And the work of the system can't be done without those folks. And again, that's why we're here celebrating National Parks and Recreation Month, because I really want to celebrate the people that do the work.
That's great, and they've done a great job
Yes,
too.
I
I mean,
agree.
just
Yeah.
going around, like I said, I've been to several different parks, several different events at parks, and the parks here are just so awesome. Now, let's just get a little personal here.
Sure.
How long have you been working with the city, and what drew you to Austin? What drew you to this line of work?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I've been in this role about a year and a half, but I've been in Austin. I like to say this is my second tour in Austin. I've been here about 4 years. I was first here way back when I did my undergrad here at the university,
Okay,
many years ago.
it's not that long.
Pretty long. But I've just come back about 4 years ago, and you mentioned Waterloo Greenway. My initial reason for coming to Austin, I served as CEO of the Waterloo Greenway Conservancy and sort of helped try to push that project forward. But frankly, when this position at the city became open, I threw my hat in the ring just because I really believe this is where the work happens in terms of really impacting community members now, and impacting the way that cities work and feel for community members. I kind of stumbled into Parks and Recreation though. I my first job out of college was I was a middle school science teacher, right? And went out to LA to teach kiddos. I thought I was teaching them math and science, but I learned a lot from them more than anything. And so did education for a while, and then kind of got the opportunity to jump into Parks and Recreation in Washington D.C. Actually, was my first job as a director there, and I was going to do it temporarily. The mayor asked me to step in and sort of kind of do some stabilization there, but I fell in love with the work. And the reason I fell in love with work is because of those people, the people who, again, would come to work every day in spite of, dwindling resources, aging infrastructure. In that situation, that's not true here in Austin, but in that situation, not a lot of public support, not a lot of political support, but they just did it, and to me, that was so important. So I was excited and honored to join their effort. So I did that in DC, and then I went out to Seattle and worked in the same role. But now that I'm in Austin, I think the city has been so smart, frankly, in investing how they do in parks and recreation over decades and decades and decades. And now our job is to continue to steward those spaces and continue to make sure that we can serve our city as it continues to change, because the city has grown and continues to grow. So we want to make sure that our spaces and our programs are responsive to all of that.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, we are talking about July, and it is Park and Recreation Month, National Park and Recreation Month. What are some events that are going on here in Austin that people should look out for during the month of July?
Yeah, and again, luckily for us, the summer is always super busy, right? And we've got activities across the system and the summer camps, all of the events that happen in parks, big events and small events. And we just encourage Austinites to get out into their parks and get out into their communities and engage in the work. Because it's National Parks and Recreation Month and we're really celebrating the professionals, I want to really highlight a couple things where we want to do just that. Just recently, we were able to convene all of our Parks and Recreation staff in one all-staff day of learning and sharing and community building, which hadn't happened in the city, at least with Parks and Recreation before. And you think about bringing, those 850 people together to sort of talk about why they do the work and why this is important in order to celebrate them. And one outcome of that, we created this, what I think is a pretty amazing sort of photography exhibit that really highlights the work of our Parks and Recreation professionals. And we're going to be showing that here at City Hall. So we encourage folks to come in, and view the pictures. And this is, the amazing Parks and Recreation folks on the front line speaking about Parks and Recreation and what it means to them from their own personal experiences. So that's one of the things that I think is just a really cool thing for folks to come out and celebrate. But really just we want folks to talk about what the power of means to them, what the power of their park, the power of their community center, the power of their summer camp, and really post that and share all that with us on social media and continue to celebrate the folks that make those things happen.
All right. And what are those social media handles where they can find more of that info?
My social media, our comms people are going to kill me, but I would defer people certainly to our website, and we've got Facebook and X and all of those things, and we'll get that out on the website. I'm sure it's there. I'm just not the most tech savvy person there. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Jonathan.
All good, all
Appreciate
good.
it.
We're good. We're
Yeah.
good. No, you cannot look bad at all.
All right.
All right, you can't.
Appreciate it.
I promise. Well, thank you so much for joining. Yes, this has just been a great chat. Anything else you want to say before we let you go?
I guess the only thing I will say is, in addition to thanking all these frontline folks, I also, again, we mentioned that I've only been here for a year and a half, and I've been so grateful and appreciative and really just inspired by the commitment and dedication that the city has for its parks and open spaces. From all of our, our city manager's office, the elected officials, all of our boards and commissions, and then, of course, all of the residents of the city. And, what better situation can we be if without that kind of support, we wouldn't be anywhere. So we're really grateful for all the support we get from everybody.
And grateful for all the work that you and everyone else on the staff does as well. I mean,
Thank you.
you've all done a great job, great work, some great stuff being done.
Yeah,
So
very excited.
I really want to commend you all for that.
There's a lot happening, so come on out to your park.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us once again. That was the director of Austin Parks and Recreation, Jesús Aguirre. I am Jonathan Thomas, and this has been another edition of City at Your Service. Have a great one.